officially the 28th of November. This month has just completely flown by. I swear to God, it felt like Halloween was yesterday. But anyway, it is getting to be right about the end of the month there. Just tweak this. Okay. I don't know. I'm still getting used to this angled thing. It's still kind of weird. Be straight. Okay. Still whatever. Okay. So basically just gonna go through books I've read this month, and then also doing my book haul of the month after. And once again, Luna is sniffing and rubbing herself over everything. Okay, so starting off with the books that I read this month in November, I actually got a decent bit of reading done because I also participated in the fall end event. Luna. I'm gonna have to get you down from there. Go take a nap over there. Maybe. Okay. So, what was I saying? So I participated in the Fall into Fantasy readathon. I didn't do as well as I wanted to, partly because the week ended up being a little bit busier than I originally had expected. Initially, I already had plans to go to a concert with Nikki on Monday night on the 19th. And then at the last minute, I was like, this would be perfect for me to do a sleepover with Aeon, because I have not had a chance to do that since we moved here. She's never come and visit at all since I moved away from Marietta about 3 years ago, because schedules are crazy and it's hard for me to have enough time to get her to be down here and also bring her back up with a sufficient amount of time while she's also out of school that I have the time off. So I planned last minute to go ahead and do that on Tuesday, bring her back Wednesday, but unfortunately things didn't quite work out that way. Vivi ended up getting sick late Sunday night into Monday, so we ended up not going to the concert. So I ended up just kidnapping Aeon Monday night, bringing her down here, staying the whole of Tuesday, and then bringing her back Wednesday afternoon to Cindy's, because Nikki was then busy picking up Oren and Yo-Yo from the airport. So that's basically what happened there. And then it was Thanksgiving, Ed was home, we stayed the day together. Friday, I had to work again, and then we had the weekend. So I still technically got 4 books in, so I'm counting it as a success, but it just wasn't quite how I'd hoped to get through. But anyway, overall for the month of November, I have completed and am in the middle of overall 1, 2, 3, 7 books. It's actually kind of similar to last month, except not quite. Anyway, so first of all, I finished The Devil Wears Prada. I was in the middle of starting it at the end of October, and managed to get through it. It was actually pretty good, more or less pretty similar to the movie, apart from a couple of, like, the friendships were different, because Andy's boyfriend is actually a teacher, not a chef, and her best friend Lily is not an artist. She what was she doing? She was just in school, actually, and she was going through a whole load of crap in the book with her life. So that was totally different, but the general things, like at Runway, were pretty much the same overall, and I enjoyed it, and I liked the little bit of differences because it made for a little bit of a different story. Then of course I moved along to the Revenge Wears Prada book, which I also had left over from the library sale, so I went directly into this, and it was pretty interesting. I mean, I didn't like it quite as much as the first one because it was a little bit slow moving. Pretty much it centers around Andy getting married in the beginning, and then a whole bunch of crap unloads because she finds a note from her soon-to-be mother-in-law saying, like, at the last minute begging her son not to marry Andy because she's not good enough, etc., etc. Cliches everywhere. And then they end up having a kid together, but the whole thing is basically makes you think that Miranda is like a lot more present than she ends up being. Pretty much it just comes down to Elias Clark wants to purchase the wedding magazine that Andy and Emily have created together called The Plunge, and pretty much them just kind of fighting over do they want to do it or not, because Andy of course doesn't want to go back to Runaway and Miranda at all, and Emily is kind of like, well, actually, and just craziness from there. But it was still a good read. Overall, I enjoyed it, just not quite as much as the other two books in the series. And then, because I didn't have the third book yet, I ended up ordering it from Amazon, but ended up reading and finishing Revenge Wears Prada like a day or two before it was due to come in. So I was looking for some short reads to get me through in the meantime, in case well, I pretty much knew I was going to finish the book before it came in. I just wasn't sure just how long, if it was going to be like a day or just an evening, and I didn't want to get stuck without something to read at the end of my shift when I finished that book. So I ended up going to the library and actually ended up getting a couple of books to choose between. Let's see here. So I ended up getting from the library The Stone Rose, which is a Doctor Who new series adventures book with the 10th Doctor and Rose. Obviously I don't have the book any longer because I returned it to the library since then, but I have read it once before through the audiobook that's actually narrated by David Tennant ages ago, which is a lot shorter and slightly different plot than the actual book, but I really liked it, partially because David Tennant, but anyway. So I read through that, and that pretty much got me through till When Life Gives You Lululemons, which is the last book in the Devil Wears Prada series. And pretty much this one centers around Emily. Andy is barely even mentioned in it. Basically, she ends up in Greenwich, Connecticut. She is now working as kind of like a consultant / manager sort of deal. I don't really know like what you would consider calling her job, but basically she comes in and helps celebrities with like certain scandals and whatnot. Like basically the senator's wife in this ends up getting framed for a DUI in order to, you know, things. So Emily has to kind of figure out, okay, how is she going to kind of come back from this, figure it out for her. And it was interesting kind of reading like, okay, why did they, you know, do all this that made it look like she had, you know, she was drunk with kids in the car, etc., etc. And it was interesting getting to know Emily a little bit better, more personally, because the other two books kind of centered on Andy, so I did like this one as well, though there were some parts I didn't particularly care for. They get really like personal with some of the conversations in this, and I'm just like, I don't know if that's my taste, but anyway. So that was the main three there. And then since I originally couldn't make up my mind at the library, I went back to my other library book choice, which was The Duff by Cody Kemper, no, not Kemper, but Keplinger, I think it is. And so I ended up reading through that. I've seen the movie a while ago, about 2 or 3 years ago, back around the time it first came out, and I rather enjoyed it. Partly because I was excited because they filmed the school at Grady, which is in Atlanta, and way back when in 2013, around April sometime, Jeff and I at the time went to a Starbucks community service event they were doing at Grady, where we were repainting, re-landscaping a bit at the school, and I actually was helping out with painting one of the hallways. So when there's like the whole scene where the video of her at the mall kind of goes viral and it kind of speeds through the hallways and everything and finds Bianca at the top of the stairs with the mural behind her, and she runs straight forward to the bathroom, and I'm just like, y'all, if she had just turned right, she would have gone down the hallway that I was in the middle of. And I included that all in a vlog ages ago, and I'll probably like link that or something. But I was kind of excited. I kind of like lost it for a minute there when I was watching the movie and saw that and like rewound it, and it was great. Anyway, moving on. So, oh yeah, by the way, the book itself is like almost completely different from the movie. Like the general plot is the same, but like other than that, it's totally different. Like this whole time in the book, like she's actually kind of like getting together with, what's his name? Crap, no, I can't remember the dude's name in it. It's been a minute since I read it. Wesley, that's it. So she keeps going to Wesley's, and they get together a lot because she's trying to basically escape from all the crap going on with her family, because her mom just kind of drops the divorce paper bomb on her father, and he kind of goes into a relapse with being an alcoholic. So it's basically all centered on that rather than just the kind of school thing, etc. And yeah, it was a lot different, but it was okay. And it was a quick read, so it was nice. After I finished reading through the Dove, okay, so I actually read a lot more than just the 8 I was counting, because I wasn't thinking of the ones in the library, so I'll recount when I'm done. Next book, I started reading Royally Jacked, which is one of these, way down there, those on the end, the little teen rom-com books that I have. I've gotten a few from Nikki over the years, and then I found a couple of my own, particularly the Royally Jacked and the third book in the series, which was Do-Over. I got them for free from Second and Charles from their free bin, and I was like, I like some of the other ones that I read, so might as well grab it since it's free, why not? So I gave the first one a try, and the whole time I was just kind of like, I'm not really sure I like the overall summary of it. It's kind of just not really seeming interesting to me. So I was already kind of starting off with, I don't know if I really want to read it or not, but I have it and I might as well give it a chance. So I tried, but I was so convinced I wouldn't like it that I went ahead and already brought another book choice as a backup to work with me. So I got through maybe 50 pages over my work shift, but I talked about this when I did a little vlog thing for starting off the Fall into Fantasy readathon. But once I got to the part where she was speaking with like her crush at school, and he was giving her his contact information because she was going to be moving, it just said that he gave her his e-addy, which was their way of doing a slang for email address. And once I read that one word, I'm just like, nope, that's the last straw. I can't do it. Nope, not this one. So I immediately just like scratched out my information on the library pocket, and yeah, I ended up turning those into Gottwals and getting some credit for another book because I did not care for it. And this one's going crazy. So yeah, that was that. So let's see. Since that didn't work out, I then got to the point where I needed to return my library books between the Stone Rose and the Dove. So I traded them out for I Don't Know What You Know Me From by Judy Greer. I have seen her in a few things. Like when I went through her IMDb officially, I've seen like 9 different things that she's been in. But the main 2 I always think of is 13 Going on 30 and 27 Dresses, of course. And so those are the main two I associate her with, but she's always pretty great and stuff that she does. So on my little like memoir biography binge that I've kind of been on and off on the last couple months, I found it at the library and went ahead and chose that to read next. Since at that point it was kind of getting closer to the start of the fall into fantasy readathon, I was about 3 days out at that point, so I needed another short read to kind of get me through. So I ended up starting I Don't Know What You Know Me From. I got about 90 pages into it. I finished basically part 1 out of the 3 parts of the book, and then I put it down for a minute so I could actually start the readathon. And so for the readathon, I originally was going to read about 5 books, I think, and I ended up getting through technically 4. I started off by reading Artemis Fowl, which was a long time book on my TBR from probably when I was about 10 or so, because that was one of Beth's favorite series at the time, along with Septimus Heap when we were younger, and she always would suggest those books to me, and I did give Septimus Heap a try at some point, and I don't know what ended up happening there, but Artemis Fowl was one I never actually got to. So when I found a copy of the first book in Goodwill a few months back, I decided to go ahead and nab it so I could get that out of my way, so that I was no longer looking at it in stores and being like, oh crap, I still need to give that a try after so long. So basically Artemis Fowl is about a 12-year-old genius who basically is referred to as kind of like a Sherlock Holmes type. His family is famous for being criminal masterminds, kind of. And basically the whole first book centers on him kidnapping a fairy named Holly Shorts, who is part of the leprechaun police, and basically he kidnaps her and uses the book of fairy rules against the rest of the fairies and the leprechaun police that are trying to rescue Holly, in order to kind of blackmail them for fairy gold. So yeah, at this point honestly I kind of liked it, and I know that if I had read it at the time I would have really loved the series probably, but at this point I have so much to read already in my shelves, and it wasn't just completely coming on to me, so I just kind of left it off that first book, and I actually have passed it on to Aeon and Roddy because they're right about that age that I originally was when I was suggested the book, and so they'll probably enjoy it. So there's that. So I no longer have that book either to kind of show. Once I finished with Artemis Fowl, I moved into the second of my books for the week. And it basically, I'm counting it as book 2 and 3 because technically it is 2 stories in one, but I followed up Artemis Fowl with Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. Again, one that I've been meaning to get for a while. I've been picking it up at Gottwal's and then putting it back on the shelf in favor of other books for ages, so it finally got to the point where I finally just actually grabbed it at one point fairly recently, and so I ended up reading through this. It took me about 2 to 3 days to read it. Most of the week, half of the week, was just Artemis Fowl because that's when I had Aeon with me and it was just crazy. So I was reading it Sunday through Wednesday afternoon / I think it was about afternoonish, because then I ended up bringing it with me and just giving it to them when I dropped Aeon off at the Cindy's. This took me, I think, till the very end of the day. It must have been Friday, I think it was, that I finished it. And so I kind of liked the Alice in Wonderland. I have watched several of the movie adaptations over the years. one point I was kind of obsessed with trying to watch all of them because I enjoyed them so much, and each one is kind of like unique because they all kind of have their own take on mixing the stories together or just focusing on one versus the other, and some are live action, some are more animated, so I've enjoyed kind of like watching the different ones over the years. So it was nice to kind of actually read the source material and see like where it all started from. And I felt like it was a little bit easier to follow the whole nonsense of it all in the book rather than the movies, because a lot of times in the movies I'm just so distracted by like the visuals of it that I'm just like, what's going on? What are they actually saying? So it was a lot easier kind of following along with, okay, some of the nonsense actually kind of makes sense in this. So it was nice to read it and actually get one of the classics off of my TBR there. And then the last book I ended up getting through in my readathon was Grim Lovelies by Megan Shepherd. I have been super excited to read this ever since I first heard about it on, I believe, Emma Book's channel, because she was partnering with them to promote the release of it, and ended up getting it right about the time that it came out last month in October. And just, I fell in love with it first and foremost because this gorgeous cover is so beautiful and it's centered in France, and I was just super psyched. And it ended up being really good. I actually really loved it. It's been a minute since I've actually found a book that I was actually really excited to like keep reading, and instead of a lot of the books that I've read are kind of like, okay, let's just kind of keep reading this, like it's a good plot, but I'm more so just kind of excited to get through it to get to the next book on my list. But this one was nice to have a break where I was kind of genuinely did not want to stop reading it to kind of get through the next piece. So it was kind of dark-ish, but not being like super extreme. I kind of like the magic of system of it where they have to consume life in various ways, whether it is blood, animals, plants, or insects. And it's interesting how like the different classes of the magic world tend to use certain kinds of ingredients with their work. Like the witches primarily do with like powders and plants and stuff, but occasionally they'll do blood from a witch's boy, etc. as well. But like the goblins pretty much exclusively use insects with their stuff, and I'm just like, okay then. But it was kind of nice. I liked the overall like feel of it, and it was very lovely getting to get all of like the Paris like details kind of scattered throughout it, and like various like French phrases kind of like thrown in there. So I really liked it. I was very pleased, and I ended up finishing this about halfway through the afternoon on Sunday. But at that point I was like, I know I'm not gonna have enough time to get through another book before the readathon is over. And at that point I was coming down to the last couple days before I had to return my library book for Judy Greer. So I went ahead and got back to that on Sunday, finished it out, and ended up returning it to the library just yesterday, as a matter of fact. So yeah, that was where we were there. Let's see. And then since I just finished those like a couple days ago, right now I'm actually in the middle of reading 2 different books. Usually I try and read one at a time lately because it's easier to just kind of keep track of, and especially when I'm at work all the time. So for this particular situation it is a little bit easier to do 2 at a time, because right now, last time I went to Marietta, well, coming technically when I was there to go to the concert initially, and then ended up picking Aeon up last Monday. Nikki and I were talking about books and everything, because I just returned the other yellow bookshelf back to her, and she had it all filled up, and we were kind of going through the different books she had, and she ended up lending me S, or Ship of Thesis, however it is referred to. I've seen it listed both ways, by J.J. Abrams and Doug Dorst. I've seen and heard a lot about it over the years, and I've kind of been intrigued by it because it's kind of like a puzzle-ish sort of thing. Basically where you're reading through the annotations by two different people that have previously read the book, going back and forth with each other, talking about the book itself and the author. I don't know a whole lot other than that, really, but basically it comes where there's a bunch of things like randomly scattered and like tossed in between the pages, and they come that way, so I was told like do not move them, do not lose them. So since I am borrowing this from Nikki, I'm not going to be taking it out with me. I'm just going to keep it to read in the house only, so that I don't have to worry about potentially losing anything from it. So since I am working on that at home, I do want to still be able to read at work, so I went ahead and started reading The Arc of the Current by Jim Johnston that I got during the Gottwal's Passport Day on Small Business Saturday, which was another reason why I didn't get as much reading into the fantasy readathon as I'd meant to, because it took ages. It took a good bit of the day, a couple of hours to do the Passport Day, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was great. I went to all 4 locations for Gottwal's here between Macon, Byron, Warner Robins, and Perry. Basically, they did a Small Business Saturday where you went to the different locations, and they filled out your passport, and depending on how many locations you went to, you got different prices. If you went to 2, you got a little token that gave you a free used book that was up to $10. If you went to 3 of the locations, you got the token plus a t-shirt and a taste of chocolate. And then if you went to all 4 locations, they gave you all of those prizes, plus you also got a $20 gift card to the store. So I got all of that, plus Macon and Warner Robins had it where the first 10 people that got to the store and mentioned their post, you got a Small Business Saturday tote bag with an arc in it. So I got that as well. I was literally the first person to go to the store. Like, I got there at 8:30 assuming like, okay, there's probably going to be a few people coming in right at the beginning and I don't want to be like outside of that first 10, but I ended up being the first one there, including employees. The employees did not even show up until like 9:15 and I was there at 8:30, and no one else showed up until like 9:50. It was awkward, but anyway, I sat there in my car and read Grim Lovelies for a bit while I was waiting. So yeah, I ended up getting The Current, and I'm trying to read that now. I basically gave it the first little while yesterday while at work, and I'm like 70 pages in now. Overall, the plot is kind of interesting. I'm intrigued by it. Basically, these 2 college girls are going, well, they're 2 friends at school, and one of them gives the other a ride home to visit her father in like Iowa, I believe, or Minnesota. I think it's Minnesota, because her father has cancer and she wants to go like check in on him, etc. Not sure how long she's gonna stay. And they get as far as like the state border for Iowa, and they end up kind of getting attacked at a gas station there about an hour out from their destination, and then they ended up losing control on the bridge since it's all snowy and wintry, and end up getting pushed into the river underneath the bridge by another car. One of the girls survives, but the other doesn't. But the main plot is where, after this happens, people in the town are reminded of a very similar accident that happened at the same bridge about 10 years earlier, I want to say. And it's just kind of figuring out, was this actually like a murder thing or just an accident, etc., etc., because the other one was, the previous accident kind of left gray areas open. So I was kind of intrigued by it. Overall, it's kind of been difficult to read though, because basically, okay, that ain't loud. I don't know what's going on. But basically it's kind of been a little bit of a difficult read because of the way it's written. I don't know how much of this is just like, okay, that's just how arcs are kind of set up, and how much of it is just the writing itself is weird. The basic point of view that this is written in is a third person, but it's kind of vague. Like there's like so many characters that are already involved in it, like well over like 10 different people are going on already 70 pages in, and I'm having a hard time like keeping track of who is who so far, because each time they switch perspectives at the beginning of each chapter, they'll just start off by saying like, she did this, she did that, he, etc., her other son. Like, okay, but who are we talking about? Which son? Like, you already specified at least one person has more than one kid, and I don't understand like who are we talking about. And it'll be that way for like a solid page, and then it'll finally specify, and I'm like, okay, now I know where we're at though. But then I've already been like so confused, and then it goes back and forth kind of vaguely between the present and the past, back and forth without really like specifying clearly which one we're in. And then the other problem is that there's a decent amount of dialogue going on between past and present, but the problem is about 60% of the dialogue is not marked with quotations. Only about 40% of the dialogue is actually marked with quotations, so it's kind of confusing. And like, there are a lot of the times where during the dialogue like two people will be speaking within one paragraph and crap like that, and it's just like, it's hard, it's a struggle, but I'm getting through it. It's just gonna take a minute to keep things straight. I may have to actually like legit do a chart of like who is who, because I'm so lost right now. But anyway, it's a good book otherwise, and I probably may or may not check into it once it's officially released to see if it's a little bit easier to follow at that point, but I am pretty excited overall. So yeah, that's pretty much what we're looking at in terms of what I read this month. So actually overall, if I count like library books that I no longer have with me, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I've completed 10 books, and I DNF'd one, which was the Royally Jacked book, and then I'm in the middle of 2 others. So about 10 to 12 books. 10 and a half. We'll see. Ish. So yeah, that's pretty much what I read through the month of November. This is taking forever to get through, but now it is time for me to go through my actual book haul, so I'm going to get that out as well, because I'm pretty sure I'm not going to get any more books this month, because I really can't do that. And I was definitely not expecting to have this many books this month after the craziness of last month, but it still happened. Let's see. Let me actually do a quick count of how many books I have. I have about 25 books in total, and oh my god, we got a problem. So yeah, starting off, so I've got books from a variety of different places this month. I got my book of the month this month. I ordered a book from Amazon to finish out a series I was in the middle of reading, which was Devil Wears Prada series. I went to Gottwal's a few times, including their Passport Day on Smallest Business Saturday, which I did a separate like vlog for. And And I did actually make a brief stop at a Target this month, since I ended up nearby one and they had such a good selection there. Also Walmart and Kroger, so I've gotten a few different books together from the different places, and I also borrowed a few books from my library, and also borrowed a book from my sister Nikki, so I've got a decent amount. And the 25 is just the ones I actually no. Technically speaking, there's only 23 if I don't count the ones that I'm just borrowing. So 23 that I bought, and then like 5-ish that I've borrowed over the month. Anyway, so starting off, the first book I ended up with was For Better and Worse by Margot Hunt, which is my book of the month choice for November that I got. Basically, it kind of takes off from like the For Better or Worse in Wedding Vows, where basically this couple has been married for, I think it was like 15 years, and then the wife, I think, kills someone. So basically it's like, okay, is the husband still in this or what? Is basically all I know about it, and now I was kind of intrigued by it. It sounded kind of interesting, so that's the one I ended up choosing. Then I ended up finding the Fantastic Beasts and Harry Potter Guide to the Films at Kroger, which was around for a while, but I thumbed through it and I was like, oh, it's so pretty, and just all the infographics and stuff, it's so beautiful. Another quick find at Kroger was Yes Please by Amy Poehler. I ended up getting a couple books from Gottwal's on a regular trip there. I ended up getting the To All the Boys I've Loved Before. Finally, I've been meaning to get it for ages, but most of the time when I go to Gottwal's I get the cheaper books, and this was still a little bit on the pricier side as a new stock that they only had that way to sell, but it was still the cheapest way I could find it, and so I finally went ahead and grabbed a copy there. I don't know if I'm the only one, but I kind of preferred getting the old school covers rather than the Netflix edition, so that's why I insisted on grabbing it from Gottwal's, because most of the other places I saw had just the Netflix cover there for the first book. On that same trip, I ended up also nabbing The Star Won't Go Out by Esther Earl, and I've seen this literal exact copy at Gottwal's for a couple of months straight, and I kept wanting to get it, but it was a little bit on the pricier end, like $7-8. I'm not talking like craziness, but for Gottwal's it's more than I usually spend on each book, which is like $2 to $3. So because it's so giant, I think this is one of the heaviest books I now have, but I've always kind of been intrigued by the kind of story that more or less inspired Fault in Our Stars, though it has been clarified that, you know, it wasn't based on her story, just kind of like inspired it generally. After that, I actually ended up going by the library and getting my first couple books from the library here. I ended up renting out the Stone Rose from the Doctor Who new series Adventures, and also The Duff, When Life Gives You Lululemons by Lauren Weisberger. And actually that same day I ended up grabbing P.S. I Still Love You, because I've been slowly now trying to get through the other books. This is as far as I've gotten so far with gathering this series. I still have to get the third book, but progress is what it is. And then I ended up picking up The Next Person You Meet in Heaven. I have not yet read the initial book, The 5 People You Meet in Heaven, just yet, but I am pretty excited to get to that. I have watched the movie a while back with John Voight in it, and I do enjoy the movie. It's very kind of philosophical, kind of centered, and I definitely did enjoy kind of the overall themes of it. So I'm excited to kind of see where the sequel actually kind of takes us, and hopefully actually rewatch the movie as well once I get to these books, because it's been too long. It just has. I'm also pretty excited about it because my friend Anna, who I went to school with back in middle school, though unfortunately we didn't go to high school together, sads of all time, she actually got to interview the author Mitch Albom for this book release. I think it was part of, I think it was like a Jewish art like website that she was hosting it through. I'll have to double check. Some of her stuff has actually been in the Marietta Dairy Journal, so I'll have to track down where it is and kind of like put it in the description or something. But I'm so excited for her. She's awesome. She's been doing amazing stuff with like her writing and everything, so every time I see something new for Anna, I'm like, oh my god, yay. I also finally got around to checking out the Warner Robins location of Gottwal's, and I'm so mad at myself because I literally was living there for like 2 years looking for a good place to get books, and I couldn't think of anywhere because all they had was like Goodwill and in the area, and their Goodwills are just, they're sad. It's been a long thing that I've mentioned many times where their book selection as a whole is, I don't think they even have as many books that I do to choose from to begin with, and then the majority of the books that they do have are like reference books and just nothing good. The only book I've ever found that I actually liked was The Devil Wears Prada. That was it. So usually I just have been picking up books from Goodwills and Second & Charles when I go to Atlanta, but as it turns out, there's a Gottwal's literally right around the corner from my old apartment in Warner Robins, and I could have been going there this whole time, and now I'm just mad at myself. But anyway, it's a thing. So yeah, I went ahead and checked out that location, and I ended up finding some really good options. I actually kind of think it may be my favorite location now, and now I'm sort of even more mad because I think I like it more than the Macon one. But anyway, it's the thing. So I ended up finding a few books. I had to do some cuts, but I did end up with Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan. I have been off and on trying to decide whether I wanted to read the Percy Jackson books, and just kind of like trying to figure it out and be like, well, maybe eventually I'll get around to it if there's like cheaper copies. But then I've seen these beautiful editions that are hardcover at the stores, and unfortunately they never had like the first one in this edition at the Macon location, but they did have one at Warner Robins, so I took it as a sign and ended up picking it up, and it's just so pretty. And while I was there, I also ended up getting two other books that time. I also got Life, the Universe, and Everything by Douglas Adams, which is one of the books in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The last book I got on that particular trip was As You Wish by The Princess Bride. And so this is another one of the celebrity biography memoirs that I have had on my wish list for a minute. I have been looking for it, hoping to get it. I did see it at Barnes & Noble, but I haven't seen it anywhere else, but they miraculously had a copy at the Warner Robins Gottwal's, so I was like, I'm not gonna take this for granted, so I grabbed it and made the final cut. The Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them screenplay, I originally read this by borrowing it from the library on the base down in Warner Robins a while back, and did enjoy reading through it, but because it's Harry Potter, I have to get it for my own. I need like a complete collection. And then shortly afterwards, they came out with the Crimes of Grindelwald sequel screenplay, so nabbed that as well while it was on the extra sale the first couple days there. I still have yet to watch the movie, sadly, because things are crazy, opposite schedules are the worst, and yeah, so soon. I'm hoping to see the movie soon. I know there's been a lot of crap going on where there's a lot of mixed feels about the movie, but I'm still excited and I want to see it. So, And while I was at Nikki's place on Monday waiting for Aeon to finish with her 4-H activity for the day, she ended up lending me her copy of S, which is also known as Ship of Thesis by J.J. Abrams and Doug Dorst. I am in the middle of reading it currently, but it's going to be a little bit slower because I'm just going to be keeping it at home so I don't lose any of the inserts that are scattered throughout the book while I am borrowing it. I ended up taking Aeon to Gottwal's. I ended up emptying out my piggy bank at the time because I'd been meaning to for a while. I'm like, this is a good way to just get some extra money for her as well to kind of play around with. So I let her use the budget of the $10 from that to get a couple books. She ended up picking out a couple of Warrior Cat books, and then a Minecraft book. And I ended up with Love and First Sight by Josh Sundquist. I've read a couple of his other books that are more biography centered, between Just Don't Fall and We Should Hang Out Sometime, which I greatly enjoyed both of them. I really like his writing, and it's actually more of a fiction that he's written, so I'm kind of excited. Basically, a blind 16-year-old named Will Porter basically ends up getting a crush on a girl named Cecily and it's kind of going from there. But I'm kind of excited seeing like the whole aspect of a blind character. I don't think I've read anything quite like that before, so I'm pretty excited to get to it, see how that goes, and just seeing how he does with a fiction book. And then during that time when I was dropping off Aeon, that's when I ended up dropping by Target and found this lovely. It's been on my to be read list. Well, technically it's been on my Amazon wish list, I should say, for a little while. It's part of the Disney Twisted Tales series, where they kind of do a twist on the different stories. So this one is basically What If Belle's Mother Cursed the Beast, and of course I love Beauty and the Beast. It's one of my favorites, so I'm interested to see how this one goes and see how that turns out. This was going to be my last read after Grim Lovelies if I had time, since I just managed to get it in the middle of the readathon, but sadly I finished Grim Lovelies right in the middle of Sunday when the readathon was ending, so I didn't get into it just yet, but I will. After that was the actual passport day at Gottwal's. So for my free used book up to $10, I ended up getting All the Bright Places by Jennifer Niven. I've heard a little bit about it from the BookTube channels. Specifically, I think Emma Books was one that mentioned it, but I've seen it in a few bookshelf tours as well, and read through the synopsis when I saw it at Barnes & Noble. Was kind of interested, so when I found a copy at Gottwal's, I ended up nabbing that while I had my lovely credits. The Princess Bride. Did I miss a book? Yes, I did. We'll fix it. Anyway, so I ended up also grabbing a copy of The Princess Bride. I've been meaning to get a copy of this for a while as well. I borrowed it once from Nikki, but never actually got around to reading it before I ended up returning it back to her because I didn't want to accidentally forget and then never have it returned. So it'll be nice to actually have a copy of my own to read, though I kind of wish I'd gotten like one of those fancier copies that looks like an old school storybook, but it's whatever. It's free books, and you know, anyway. And then the last book I got was Scythe by Neil Shusterman. I have been anxious to get to this for ages because Emma on her channel brags about this book so much to the point where I haven't even read it, but I feel like I already love it just as much as she does. And when I was picking it up, the girl at Gottwal's who works there was like, "Oh my god, you're getting Scythe, that's the best." So yeah, it's gonna be a thing, and I'm excited to get to it for sure. Okay, so there's two books that I kind of skipped there. So I also have Girl Wash Your Face by Rachel Hollis. Another one that I've had on my Amazon wish list for a minute and keep getting suggested, like held off for a while because I wasn't really sure what it was about, but Amazon kept suggesting it to me all the freaking time. So then I finally got around to reading what it was about, and I'm like, okay, I'm for it. It sounds like an interesting kind of like inspirational / sort of self-help book there, and it's also been pretty popular through YouTube channels. And on the Beauty and the Beast binge, I also ended up with Lost in a Book, which was also a book that I got through my Amazon wish list for a while. Was sitting there. I wasn't sure I would ever actually find a copy in person, but they managed to have one, so I nabbed it. This book that I ended up buying this month was Dead on Arrival by Matt Richtel. I was kind of like glancing over things initially, but then I saw this cover, I'm like, that actually does look kind of interesting. Ordinarily I would have just like passed by it, but then I ended up just being like, what the heck, just read the synopsis. Basically, this one flight, when they land in Colorado, and they end up landing to find out that everyone else on the world basically has died due to some virus, and there is a Dr. Lyle Martin, who is a world-class infectious disease specialist, was on the plane, I believe, and he has to kind of basically figure out what happened, what killed everyone else off. Just kind of going from there. So at that point I was like, okay, now I want to know. And then yesterday I went back to the library. I traded out I Don't Know What You Know Me From by Judy Greer, which I ended up getting after I returned Stone Rose in the Duff, while I was needing a book for kind of the interim before the fall into fantasy, and ended up putting a pause on it. But anyway, I returned that yesterday, and I ended up getting 2 other books in place of it. I ended up getting a copy of The Elephant Goes to Hollywood by Michael Caine, once again a biography memoir by a celebrity. I saw this at Gottwal's initially when I went to get the Michael J. Fox copy of Lucky Man, and ended up seeing it at the library, so I'm like, okay, this will do. I'll be able to read that. And then I couldn't decide on just one book between the adult section, which was where the biography came from, and the young adult section, so I ended up getting 2 books this time. I also ended up getting Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Maniscalco. I've heard a little bit about this from Emma's channel as well. I keep mentioning her because she's basically my obsession with BookTube. It's okay. But anyway, I do have a copy of Escaping Houdini that just came out, and I got that I think in October or September, but I'm not entirely sure if you need to read the first 2 books before that one, because I can't say for certain if it's the same girl that goes throughout each book or if it's just like separate-ish sort of stories. But from what I've heard, I'm leaning more towards the fact that they're directly related, like the same girl is the main character in each book. So I am going to go ahead and at least borrow the other 2 from the library, because I'm not sure if I'll like the first 2, because I'm not really as interested in Jack the Ripper or Dracula as much as I was in the Houdini one. So I may just read these 2 from the library just so that I am in context for when I read the one that I'm actually purchased. So yeah, that's basically what's been happening for November. It's been a crazy month. I am officially out of shelf space, and I'm actually going to be building another bookshelf this weekend, though it's not really going to be in addition to the ones we have. It's just going to be another replacement so that all of them match now. Basically just replacing the 4th bookshelf, the brown one that has all of Ed's stuff on it, because that'll be going back to Nikki in addition to the yellow one that this one was replaced with, or replaced by, I should say. So there may be a little bit more space because it's a little bit bigger than the brown one that we have, but overall I'm not really getting like a full extra bookshelf just yet. So sadly, some of the books have kind of been stacked haphazardly wherever they will fit, even though they don't like go specific places, or just like on top of the bookshelf, etc. So I am trying to finish getting through all of my books by the end of the year. Like trying to get through, hopefully I want to try and get to like maybe 50. I'm like somewhere in like the high 30s to 40-ish somewhere. I'll have to double check now that I've gone through like the readathon and stuff, but like I'm so excited to hopefully get to 50 books at the end of the year and see how that goes. So I am going to kind of end things here. So my battery kind of died right there in the middle of ending, but basically just making sure I have like a proper end instead of just being cut off, being like, I'm gonna end things here, click. So yeah, it's been a lovely time going through all my new books and everything. I'm going to get some Ship of Thesis read and get things ready for work, and see you another time.